Hello everyone. So today we are going to start on the topic and how can you use your criminal litigation skills to serve corporate clients. So basically the idea of today's webinar is that there's this myth that most of the criminal lawyers, what they do is they draft bail applications, they represent individuals before this, and generally there is no nexus between your understanding of corporate law and serving corporate clients and your criminal litigation skills. So today I'm going to be discussing that. First of all, I'd like to begin with if the participants can introduce themselves, what they are doing, so that I have a brief idea about the audience. About myself, I'm Yash Vijayvargiya. I've graduated from NUJS 2016. I have previously been legal counsel for Bharat Petroleum, and I practice before, right now I practice before Madhya Pradesh High Court and Trial Court in Indore. Now, I also anchor the criminal litigation course and tax litigation course for LawSikho. Guys, if you can give your introduction on chat, it would be really helpful. Pushpadeep, Udit. Anyway, so we will directly jump into the topic that is today. Structure of today's webinar would be, what are the myths about criminal practice? I will tell you what are the different things that people think criminal litigation lawyers do, which are not actually true. After that, we will discuss criminal litigation skills you need to have to serve corporate clients. This would be what are the skills that you draft so that what are the skills that you need to have to serve corporate clients. I'll be explaining that whether you need to draft FIRs, complaints, and what are the other things you need to work on so that you're ready to serve corporate clients. After that, we will be discussing some of the matters that you can eventually target to get, and how, as a beginner, where do you start using criminal law, and what is your eventual aim to target the kind of matters, because at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? Everybody wants to work in high-stake litigation matters. And since most of our audience is law students, so I will tell you that where do you start working from. Okay, so let's start with the first thing. What are the 5 myths about criminal litigation? So before this, I'd like all of you to tell me that what do you think criminal lawyers do when it comes to corporate clients? What kind of work do you think criminal lawyers do initially? When somebody tells you, when somebody tells at home that, okay, I'm going to pursue criminal law, what are the first thing that your parents or your peers might think would be the kind of work you'd be doing? I'm giving you 1 minute to type in chat. Guys, be interactive, because accordingly, I will tell you the things that you need to know depending on what kind of work you have previously done, or if you're a law student, what are the course, if you're already student of a course, what are the kind of criminal litigation work you can target along with your course. So just be interactive. Correct. Just give me a minute. Till then, please type your response. I've only received Pushpadeep's response. Yeah. So Pushpadeep says that criminal cases like theft, murder, etc., that they say you will not be able to make good money if you are in criminal litigation. Anyway, that is true for all kind of litigation. And second, if you're doing good litigation work, then mostly you would be dealing with criminals, you would be dealing with offenders. And when I tell someone that, listen, go to criminal litigation, probably it is never in their mind that most of their clients might be corporate clients, people who are CEOs, people who have started startups and all. So that is the idea of today's webinar, to tell you that the presumption that you have, that if you're if you're working in criminal litigation, it's going to be daily going to court and doing bail applications. That's not how it's going to work. There is a hell lot of other area that you can target, and the best thing about this kind of work is not many lawyers do it. There are very few lawyers who understand the provision of criminal law, who know litigation, and are also well versed with corporate matters. As you know, a lot of provisions of Companies Act, GST, taxation, others have criminal implications. We will discuss all of them in today's webinar. So just like Pushpadeep said, what let's start with the myths that are associated with criminal litigation. I'm going to keep this very brief. First is, I will only get bail applications as a beginner. Like I said, that the first thing when you ask a normal person, Aryan, you just missed the introduction. Basically, we were discussing that when somebody is coming and thinking about criminal litigation, they always think that they'll be dealing with, you know, individuals who are regular offenders. Probably very rarely people, when they think criminal litigation, they think that they'll be dealing with corporate clients day in and day out. So that is the idea of today's webinar. So yeah, myths. We were talking about myths that are associated with criminal litigation. So first is that, yeah, most of the work you will get initially as a beginner will only be bail applications. I will today explain to you how that is a very big myth, and there are so many things that you can target as a lawyer who has just graduated, or even in fourth or fifth year of law, the fifth year of your college. You don't need to be lawyer for those kind of work. Second, I will be serving criminals and individuals involving in dispute. While partly true that everybody who is going to come to a criminal lawyer would be involved in some kind of criminal dispute, but rarely do you know that most of the time you can always have corporate clients who have never been involved in a dispute per se. These are things that they have failed to file something which will have criminal implications. Third, corporate clients generally need service of only civil and corporate lawyers. So yeah, this is very common myth that most of the people who have companies, CEOs and companies, they only require, corporate lawyers. They don't require litigators, and especially criminal litigators, they do not require the service, which is not true at all. In fact, if you'd ask any person who's been working in a company for long, there would be at least one, or there would be several instances where they had to go to a criminal lawyer for advice, for representation, because it is very common that if you have a big company, or if you're dealing with several businesses, you are bound to have disputes that will have criminal implications. Second, I do not need to understand the basics of civil law if I'm practicing criminal litigation. Again, so this is where a lot of criminal lawyers go wrong. When they start their practice, they're always thinking, हाँ मुझे बस CRPC, IPC आना चाहिए. I should know how criminal litigation work, and I really don't need to read property law. I really don't need any knowledge of company law. But that's where you are wrong, because the fact is that core criminal work, it's already a very crowded market. So if you want to enter and stand out as a criminal litigator, it is very important that you should have some knowledge of how corporate clients work. For instance, I'll tell you an example about myself. In 5 years of law school, I was very sure that I do not want to do litigation, especially criminal litigation. I was always interested in criminal law. I was convener of Society of Criminal Law in NUJS, but I never thought that I'll do criminal litigation. I always focused on reading corporate law, and I got a job in Bharat Petroleum as their in-house counsel after the college. I worked there for 2 years, And I had a good understanding of corporate law till then. When I shifted my base and thought of starting my own practice and law firm, the first thing that I realized was that there's this huge void in market of criminal lawyers, of lawyers who understand provisions of both criminal law and companies law, income tax, GST, and serve corporate clients. In fact, here also, my biggest clientele are those companies, corporate startups who face once in a while criminal proceedings. Another thing, this is from a very personal place. So I always used to think that agar criminal work आया भी, so that would only be restricted to big companies and metros, Bombay, Delhi, and probably cities like Indore or even smaller cities. They are not going to have corporate clients who will need service of a criminal lawyer. So I'll explain that's not the case. In fact, many provisions of GST, like raising of invoice and all, they will have criminal implications which people do without knowing them. So, and GST authorities are very uh, prompt in filing criminal cases, in starting criminal proceedings. So in fact, and these are something you will find even in smallest cities. So it is very important that you should be aware of these provisions. Okay, so these were the general myths. Can anybody tell me what are the other myths that you had, that you thought when somebody was like a criminal lawyer, or anything I missed? You can just post your response on the chat. Okay, now we will start with our next topic. This is the most important thing. So, okay, we have understood. I've just explained to you that as a criminal lawyer, you're not only going to be dealing with individuals, but you're going to be dealing with a lot of corporate clients. And you have decided after that that, okay, you want to be a criminal lawyer for corporate clients. So, what are the key skills that you should develop? And trust me, these are not the skills that I am telling you that you will need years to develop. These are very, very important skills that even a fourth year or fifth year law student can develop in couple of weeks. You just need to know how these things have practical implications. And most of the civil lawyers, they do not do this kind of work, so they are unaware. So there's this huge market gap. First and foremost important thing, that if you are going into a if you're going to be in criminal litigation or even a civil lawyer, I would say that you should always be aware that what are the criminal liabilities and procedures that are there in Companies Act 2013, GST, Income Tax Act, NI Act, Intellectual Properties Law, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. These are some of the most important laws that companies deal on regular basis. And most of these will have probably 3 or 4 provisions where there are criminal liability. Not only you need to know those provisions, but also you will see that there are certain things like requirement of filing a complaint if you have lost your share certificate, requirement of filing a complaint if you want to get your insurance. So these are things that as a criminal lawyer, you should be aware that these are the kind of clients you can target. And what happens is that if you're somebody who is looking to develop both civil and criminal practice, in fact, if you'll go in Indore, if you'll see most of the good lawyers, they either do criminal practice or civil practice. There are very few people who do both, and that is why they stand out. Because it's also very easy to transition if you have served a client for a small criminal matter, but you have good knowledge of corporate law as well. There's higher reliability. The client do not need to go to somebody else. You retain the work, you get good work. So that is why have basic knowledge that what are the criminal liabilities that they will incur irrespective of whether you're a criminal lawyer or a civil lawyer, so that you can advise your client accordingly. That listen, this is the importance of this provision and this compliance. Otherwise, you will have criminal liabilities flowing from it. Second, I cannot stress this enough. This is a very small thing which most lawyers initially, especially who are practicing in civil law, they do not understand. And this looks very simple, that drafting of complaint, FIRs and procedures, various provision of CRPC. Because what happens is you really need to know how to draft a good complaint and file an FIR. Mostly, if you'll ask any corporate client or anybody, they are very, as soon as as soon as they come across an offense, they are not very comfortable going and filing a complaint. And I always tell people that it is always a good idea to have your complaint or have your complaint drafted through a lawyer, because they understand the provisions, they understand that you need to make out the ingredients. Other thing that happens with complaint is if it is not well drafted, if there are contradictory facts, and if you have missed something while drafting the complaint to police station, you will not have a chance to change it. There will be a presumption which will be drawn against you. So a person who can draft a complaint well will always have an additional advantage. And second thing I'll tell you from my practical experience that happens is, most of the time in case of economic offenses, when you will go to a police station, the police will not register an FIR readily, even if it's a cognizable offense, because they don't understand these provisions of law. Second thing, they do not get these kind of clients on a regular basis. So you need to know how to proceed. You need to guide them that in case the police is not registering the complaint FIR, then how to go, what are the, how do you file a complaint and to a magistrate under 156(3). These are very important skills. Probably, in fact, I would strongly suggest that we had a workshop about 2 days back, 3-hour workshop on how to draft a complaint. And we discussed in very detail the things that you need to keep in mind. It is available on 𝘀𝘀 page. Go back and go through that video. We have discussed in detail the things you need to learn. And this is a very important key skill, because as a lawyer, if you are a law graduate, your neighbors or somebody will inevitably come to you and be like कि यार ये केस हो गया है, हमें ना कंप्लेंट फाइल करनी है. तो आपको पता होना चाहिए कि कंप्लेंट के प्रोविजन क्या होता है. एंड सेकेंडली, इट इज वेरी एम्बैरेसिंग इफ समबडी कम्स टू यू. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that the link to the workshop has been posted. Thank you so much, Jagannath. So please go through the workshop. We received very good feedback, and plus it's very high value. For in 3 hours you're going to learn skills which people take days, months to learn. So like I was saying, that if tomorrow your neighbors or somebody comes to you to file a complaint FIR, and you say कि यार मुझे provisions नहीं पता, मुझे नहीं पता कि अगर पुलिस register नहीं करी. This is the most common question. आपसे पूछेंगे जब आप बोलेंगे lawyer है तो, कि police is not registering my FIR, what should I do? So you should be able to guide them. So always remember that drafting of complaint and FIR is a skill where you should be able to understand the provision and draft a complaint accordingly, going through the ingredients. Especially in cases of intellectual property and Companies Act, IT Act, that these are the, how do you make out the provisions? So learn these keys, learn this key skill. Drafting reply to notices. So what happens is, most of the people think that replying to notice is something which civil lawyers do. Criminal lawyers क्यों notice का reply करेंगे? Because if you're involved in a criminal offense, then there's no need to give notice. But what happens often is, with organizations, especially companies, most of the time people do not go directly and file an FIR or complaint. Or in fact, if somebody is probably defaming you, we always advise, which has both civil and criminal consequences, then it is not a very smart idea to directly go and file a complaint, because what happens is you look aggressive. There's also this thing of bad press that you're intimidating people. So the best way to do it is have a measured approach. We always tell our clients, if, for instance, I had a corporate company where one of their customer, they wrote a long Facebook post with completely unverified wrong facts. And this post was written by one of the competitor. Now in this case, what do? It was clear that this is nullified. It was drafted to harm the reputation of this corporation. So now when they come to us, one of the first thing any lawyer would advise is go file a complaint for criminal defamation. But this would, before that, a very good stage would be that you file a legal notice, tell them that this is what you have done, these are the facts that are there, and we are going to proceed against you in both civil and criminal manner. And 75% of the time, if they are not backed by someone, they will back off. So you should know how to draft a good notice. And the key skill of a good notice is that it should have actionable steps. You should give a timeline that if you do not reply in 7 days, we will do this. If you do not reply in 14 days, we will do this. For instance, if somebody is copying a trademark, so you will definitely file a legal notice saying that if 7 days you do not reply, we will file a civil suit. 14 days, we will file a criminal suit. We will file a criminal complaint. Because remember, copying, falsifying trademark, and all of these are criminal offenses as well. You're doing forgery, plus Copyrights Act has specific criminal provision. Trademarks Act has specific criminal provision if somebody is copying your trademark and using them on their goods. So you should be aware on how to draft a good legal notice. And second, reply if you're receiving a legal notice. Sometimes people do that. They want negotiation before filing a criminal complaint, because most of the time, once you have filed an FIR, it's not easy to withdraw it. So what do you do? In that case, generally people go and give a notice to the corporation. So you should be able to reply to a notice in a very good way that you will have facts. You should be able to bring out your defenses, but not write everything. So that is the art of balancing that you should know in drafting reply to notice. After that, knowledge of basic principles of how criminal proceedings and civil proceedings can run parallelly. So as you know, civil proceedings and criminal proceedings are completely different proceedings, and one does not affect the other. The principle of res judicata does not apply. And in fact, this is a lot of courts also get this wrong, that if you're filing a civil suit, you cannot file a criminal complaint. That's not true. You can have both the proceedings run parallelly because they are for different outcomes. One is to ensure that a person has done a wrong against society. If somebody is falsifying trademark, giving bad goods, then it's not that you're harming the reputation of a company. You're also ensuring that customers who believe in quality, who are going to that, they might face consequences because of lack of quality and other implications that happen in such cases. So you should know the basic principles of how criminal proceedings work. Simple things like doctrine of vicarious liability. A lot of time companies, their CEOs will come where their employee has committed a criminal act during the course of employment to a third party. So till what extent the company is liable, that you should be able to know. All of these doctrines do not work in standalone. Most of the time they will be coinciding. So you should know various judicial precedents and how courts have dealt in this situation. For instance, doctrine of identification. So most of the time when a person is going to another company as a representative of the company will be identified with its employees. Doctrine of collective blindness. So for instance, doctrine of collective blindness is that if all the employees of the company are looking away, resulting in some act, some negligent act, then they all will be liable for it. Doctrine of willful blindness. If all the employees of the company are willfully not obeying certain laws or willfully not following the safety norms, then the corporation and its employees will be liable. Doctrine of attribution. Basically, what doctrine of attribution says is that how do you read the mind of corporation? It's not a person, it's a legal entity. So whatever all the key managerial persons are saying in press, will be attributed to the corporation, and a lot of times there will be criminal liabilities on the key managerial persons if some of their employees are saying something and they are not refuting it in the course of their employment. Doctrine of alter ego. Again, similar to doctrine of attribution, owners of the company are considered as alter ego of the company, and if they are violating norms, they are doing something which has criminal consequences, which is resulting in deaths. For instance, when I was in Bharat Petroleum, if there are certain safety norms that are not followed by your employees and it results in an accident. We used to have tanker lorries. We used to deal with petroleum and other substances which were extremely hazardous. So tomorrow, if because of your negligence, if because of your lack of safety norms, 5 people die, so then what do? You will make sure that the safety officer will also be liable, even though safety officer was not there, but he will be criminally liable and there will be a complaint registered against him as well. So you need to know the various precedents. You need to understand how these doctrines work, because outside the jurisdiction also these play out very importantly. Okay. Tanvi has a question, I think. See guys, if you have any question, I just request, Tanya has a question. If you have any question, please post it on chat. I will take all of the questions once I finish a particular section. Second, knowledge of geography, areas and common concerns. So what do I mean by knowledge of geography, areas and common concern? So another thing, as somebody who is practicing criminal law, you should be aware of what kind of industries, what kind of corporates work in your area, and what are the important laws that are associated to it. For instance, if you live in an area where there are mining factories, where there are petroleum plants, then you will know that safety norms, dealing with hazardous waste, all of these laws are something that have criminal implications. Similarly, if you are living in an area where there is beach, then a lot of norms in Environmental Protection Act will have criminal implications if you violate them. So you should know about geography. Other thing, if you live in an industrial area, then Legal Metrology Act, one of the most commonly used act, that if there is some problem in your weights, then there will be a criminal case filed immediately upon inspection. So you should know what kind of area and industries that operate around you and specific laws, because, and again, labor laws that are applicable to those industries, because these are very important laws and only legal counsels generally know these. So if you're a lawyer who has worked on these matters, it's very easy to develop expertise. For instance, a person who has done 15 cases in Legal Metrology Act. For instance, a person who has done, what was I saying? Yeah, legal metrology. For instance, a person who has done 10 to 15 cases in legal metrology will be considered as an expert because the cases are few. So try to have expertise in these laws because they have extremely high return value. Okay, so any questions regarding this? We were discussing key skills you need to develop to serve corporate clients. These were very broad skills that I had on. I will be coming to specific provisions in the next section. So till then, if you have any question, I'm giving you 1 minute, 2 minutes to ask questions that you had related to this. 𝘚𝘂𝘃𝘶 has a question. I'm a first year student in 3-year LLB course. What sort of skills should I develop in order to have good career in corporate and litigation? And where can I go get those skills? So a very good question. So see, if you want to develop skills in litigation, you need to do courses that teach you drafting, that tell you how these skills work in parallel. Unfortunately, our law schools leave a lot to be desired. In fact, when I came out of law school and suddenly I was interested on taking care of entire state of Karnataka for Bharat Petroleum. I had absolutely no idea about how courts work, and it took me a lot of time to go to courts, sit with people, and learn those skills. Luckily, I had few people whom I had few seniors and others who I had to reach out continuously to help me out because my college never prepared me for those kind of skills. So, if you want to develop a career in criminal litigation where you get a lot of corporate clients, you need to understand, most importantly, practical skills like drafting of complaints, how do police station works, because these are the problems that you encounter on daily basis. आपको CRPC का provision भी पता होगा, but you do not know how it works in court. You do not know how difficult it is to get a FIR registered in your area. You do not know कि आपको किस किस चीज की कॉपी लगेगी. So that is why you need, first you should work with somebody who is doing that kind of work. Second, go take courses. For instance, we have a criminal litigation course where you blend in learning. We give case studies. We do not ask you provisions. We don't have theoretical question that what is this provision or what are the case laws. We give you very real practical problems. For instance, last week we had given a problem of drafting a complaint for a criminal defamation, that somebody has criminally defamed a corporation and wrote a long article in newspaper. So the legal counsel of the corporation had come to you. So how do you draft the complaint and how do you advise them? What are the different stages in the proceedings that happen? So those kind of take courses like that. Check out our criminal litigation course, in fact. How to start learning both work side by side. Please guide what should be the first step. So to learn both side by side would be that first you should know the basics. Always, if you are criminal litigation, if you want to enter criminal litigation, your basic skills like drafting an FIR, drafting complaint, conducting trial, those should be very good. Second, take a basic course on company law. Understand what are the different provisions and what are the criminal cases that happen. Unfortunately, there are no, this is again not taught in law school, and if you'll see most of the courses that are there on corporate law, they do not deal in detail with company law provisions. So yeah, it might sound like a plugin, but these I always say that our criminal litigation course is the only course that get into detail with all of these. Or second, work with a criminal lawyer and work with a corporate lawyer, work with a criminal lawyer who has a lot of corporate work. That is very rare, but you'll have to find people who have transitioned from a law firm and are running their own criminal law practice. And second thing is, like I said, if you're a beginner, you can always focus on these kind of work. I'll tell you what are the different kind of works that you can initially focus. If in your 4th or 5th year of law student, develop your skills on LinkedIn, post about it, and you will get this work like drafting complaints, FIRs. So this is the most common matter. So again, flowing from your question, we will discuss what are the most common matters that you can get from your corporate clients. So what I'll do is I'll start with things that you can get at a beginner level, that things that you can start to flourish and build that relationship with corporate clients. First would be, like I discussed, drafting of complaints and FIR. You don't draft FIR, you help you draft a complaint, after which police registers an FIR. So first and foremost, criminal defamation cases. This happens very often that you will have somebody against whom an article is written in newspaper against a corporation, somebody is trying to settle personal scores, or you have people who write on social media, and this is increasingly happening, that rivals will write on social media looking like genuine customers and defame the corporation, and after that the post goes viral and you will have people boycotting the entire company. So in those cases, you can go to a civil court, you can ask for damages, but that's a very long process. How do you stop them? The thing with criminal law is that it has very good deterrent, that the process is very fast, that if you're filing a criminal complaint, then there will be a very good deterrence value if it's not a genuine case. So criminal defamation. In fact, in 2017, Supreme Court has categorically ruled that corporations do have right to file criminal defamation cases if they feel that there was a malified intention and it was done to bring disreputation to them. Second would be loss of share certificate, property, car, etc. to get insurance. So in fact, this is something most of you have always encountered, that if you've lost a mobile phone or something to get insurance, you will have to file a complaint to police station. So you can always help people out, because what happens with most, for instance, most of my family members, they are not very comfortable going to court and they always want to seek somebody's opinion how to do it, even if they are going to file a complaint for loss of mobile phone. So in these cases, when there's a specific laws for share certificate, if somebody wants to get a duplicate share certificate, they need to file a complaint before getting share certificate. So learn all of this, that how to draft. Again, we go back to our first point, that you need to learn how to draft a complaint well. And for all of these cases, the complaint would be different. The nature would be different. If somebody is stealing your thing, then it would come under a different provision of law. And in fact, if you've dropped it somewhere, then it would come under a different provision of law, and that accordingly has to be dealt in your complaint. Second, medical negligence. Third, medical negligence. So in medical negligence, again, it has both civil and criminal consequences. So if a lot of hospitals nowadays, increasingly there's this mentality that hospitals, they charge a lot and they are mind making. And what happens is, when somebody loses a near or dear one, they're very emotionally charged. They want to do everything that is there in their hands to get the person punished. Well, it's not rational, it comes out of emotions, but a lot of big hospitals face these kind of matters where regularly FIRs will be lodged, complaints will be lodged, and especially in these are very tricky cases, because most of the time they will go to a lawyer and get a case filed, a civil and criminal case filed. So here you need to know how to draft a reply to legal notice, how to file a counter complaint, what are the different options you will give. For instance, going with criminal defamation, how to read out the facts, how to advise your clients to prepare a case file, what is the value of evidence. And there are not too many people who do this kind of work. In fact, most of the medical negligence cases, if you'll ask somebody that what is medical negligence, most of them will be like, हाँ, ये तो consumer forum का case. But nahi, medical negligence has a lot of criminal liabilities as well. So this kind of work you need to learn. Then Copyrights Act and Trademarks Act. Like I said, Copyrights Act and Trademarks Act, these are one of the most often used provision to stop somebody if there's a counterfeiting going on. Because क्या होता है कि if a client comes to me and they are saying that somebody has copied our content or copied our trademark, then what do? अगर आप legal notice भेजोगे, you'll file a civil suit for injunction. This process takes time, and especially if you have lost the injunction suit, then there's no way you're going to stop somebody. So instead, what you can do is you can file a criminal complaint in these cases. I think copyright में 53 है section that has criminal consequences. And now very simple question, like whether you file under Copyrights Act or Trademarks Act. So which of these are cognizable offense? Where a FIR can be registered? For instance, I had one case where my company's goods were being copied. They were manufacturer of certain plastic utensils and all. And somebody took the same name and started manufacturing similar goods. Now, the client came to us and client was like, advise us what to do. The first thing we advised was that you obviously file a civil suit. But other than that, you parallelly file a suit under Copyrights Act, not Trademarks Act. Because what happens in Trademarks Act is if you're filing a criminal complaint, they will have to take a permission from registrar. Under Copyrights Act, you don't have to do that. They can directly go if the police finds that there's suitable evidence, then they can directly go and seize goods. And just because of this small thing, all the goods were seized in 4 days of filing the complaint. And there's always a lot of negotiation goes on. So if you're very good with law, if you understand the provisions, then you'd be able to do this thing in a fastest manner. The client had before us approached to a lot of lawyers, but we got the job done in smallest period of time. Now it's a big company. What happens when you get things done really fast like this? You build a long-term relationship. You get so many other matters because they trust you that these are not people who think from one point of view. They have a 360-degree view of the entire thing. So a good knowledge of criminal provisions of all the laws that are there is essential for a criminal lawyer. Second, IPC provisions regarding misrepresentation, misappropriation, fraud. These are very important because in IPC, if you'll see Indian Penal Code, they define persons to include corporation. So a corporation can both file a complaint and complaints can be filed against it. And these are the most common things that a corporation will file complaint is if there's a misrepresentation done by some other third person. For instance, if somebody is representing as an agent of a company, what do? Then you can file a criminal complaint because this misrepresentation is bringing disreputation and it is done in a malified manner. So you should be able to be aware of this. Second, a lot of corporations face cases of frauds where they had given a statement not intentionally, but they had everybody likes to brag in their advertisements. Now, what happens is a lot of people who are aware of the law, they will go and file a complaint of fraud. And then there are unsatisfied customers who come with malified intention and they just want to get back. People have different tempers. So they will just want to get back to the corporation. So they will file a 420. So how do these proceedings happen? How do you get to quash FIR? There will be a lot of FIRs that are filed. In fact, the other day you must have heard of movie 𝘚𝘚, right? So now Netflix, there was this FIR which was filed against that for hurting religious sentiment. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's a series. So as a criminal lawyer, what do? You will know that the first thing you have to do is you have to go for quashing of FIR. You're working with a corporation. So these are the kind of matters that will come regularly. And yes, we cover all of these in our criminal litigation course. You will have a quashing of FIR where somebody has filed a complaint for hurting religious sentiments. This is most common. So how do you draft a good petition to quash FIR? Then how do you represent before the court? What are the different precedents? How does the procedure work? How will you explain it to the legal counsel? These are the things that we do. Again, section 420. So what does section 420 of IPC says? Cheating and inducing someone to deliver the property to someone with dishonest intention. So this is a very broad section. 420 का तो हम we all know कि 420 हम बहुत general parlance में use करते हैं. And trust me, the number of corporations against whom cases are filed for 420, as well as the number of times corporations have to file cases of 420 because there's a third party who has misrepresented as agent of them. So you'll always go and file a 420. In trademark and IPC cases also, आप 420 का केस भी साथ में लगाओगे. Then false documents. If your employee has submitted a false mark sheet, then you will proceed false mark sheet, or if your vendor is producing some false documents to get a tender, then you should know that falsifying any document is a criminal offense. The best way to have a deterrence value is that you file an FIR against that person, and then you don't have to worry about the headache, kahan se hua, kya hua, what are the true facts. The investigation will take care of that. The second most important case, Legal Metrology Act. Can anybody tell me? I'm just drinking water. Meanwhile, can anybody tell me what Legal Metrology Act is? Think about it. What do you think by the name what Legal Metrology Act would be dealing with? और कहाँ पे आपने सुना है कि cases in legal metrology are filed? Guys? So basically Legal Metrology Act क्या बोलता है? And Weights and Measures Act. Just a second, somebody has applied. Related to measuring or weights of goods or something. Very good, Pushpadi. So basically what that act says is कि अगर आप जो if you're selling goods or anything और उसमें पता है 1 ग्राम 10 ग्राम का भी डिफरेंस आता है, then it will have criminal liability. So whenever inspection is done, whenever other things are done, आपको बहुत बार मिलेगा कि proceedings under Legal Metrology Act and FSSAI are done. These generally work in tandem और दोनों में criminal proceedings होती है. दिवाली के पहले आप न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ोगे, so you will see lot of times there are criminal cases that are filed against the shop owners, against corporations, where there's some defect in the weights and measures is done. So you should be very well aware of Legal Metrology Act. Then bank frauds, RBI Ombudsman scheme. So this again is very common हर किसी के family में, and especially आजकल there are so many internet frauds that happen that एक link आएगी, people keep clicking. So I think the other day somebody was telling me they received a link from something that was named Zomato, that 1+1 free रहेगा इस पे, and as soon as you click on link, automatically it starts a UPI transaction. So these kind of things, when there are these frauds that are happening, or for instance, your bank officer, the person you trust, he embezzles money in your fund, then what do? Then you will have to go for criminal proceedings as well as RBI Ombudsman scheme. So RBI Ombudsman scheme, what it is it will punish the erring officer, and it is the fastest way of getting resolution done. Should be aware of these provisions because these work in tandem. Your at the end of the day, what should be your intention and what should be your final outcome? कि client का जो भी, if he has come to you with a legal issue, then you should be able to resolve it in smallest period of time. A client who gets a problem done, problem solved in smallest period of time, they will be happiest. उससे ज़्यादा उन्हें कुछ नहीं चाहिए कि जल्दी से आप उनका इशू सॉल्व करें. Then bribery, Prevention of Corruption Act. This always happens that that somebody is trying to get a license or something, and there will be public officials who will be asking them for money. So how do you ensure that such things don't happen to your corporation? And sometimes what happens is this is huge sum of money that people have to pay. Certain corporations refuse to pay this on basis of their ethical grounds. So you should be able to advise them कि how will you proceed, how do you complain, vigilance कैसे होता है. There's this procedure of trap, because Prevention of Corruption Act के matters are very simple. You should follow A, B, C, D things. उसमें आपको loopholes निकालने रहेंगे. So if you're advising somebody, then you should be able to be aware of this provision कि when the trap is happening, how to do it, what are the things you need to take care of, recording आपको कैसे करनी है ताकि बाद में कोई loopholes ना निकले. Then intellectual property laws, like I had discussed already, that they are the faster way to stop somebody from counterfeiting your goods. NI Act, ये तो सभी को पता होगा, Negotiable Instrument Act, check bouncing cases. These are quasi-criminal cases. So they will have civil as well as criminal outcome. So you should be able to draft a complaint under NI Act. We do this in our criminal litigation course. Cybercrime, so impersonating someone, ये भी काफी होता है आजकल, because most of the time, especially after COVID, you're dealing with people on a virtual basis. It's very easy to impersonate or take someone's identity. Somebody will log in to your Twitter account, send messages to somebody else, and that person will file an FIR. So you should be aware how do you ensure that if such cyber crime and identity theft is committed, then what do you do? Companies के साथ ये होता है. Then child pornography. A lot of companies, what happens is their website gets hacked. People upload child pornography and other things. A lot of times employees are involved in a dispute where somebody has browsed through it. Both of these will have criminal consequences, not just for the employee, but for the company as well. You should be aware of POXO's provision, counterfeiting of currency. If your corporation has received money which is counterfeited and it goes into circulation, there will be criminal liability to the corporation. So you should know that counterfeiting के क्या provisions है. And these are punishable under separate special legislation as well as Indian Penal Code. Then employment placement rackets. Newspaper में आप पढ़ते होंगे that deposit 10,000 rupees, 15,000 rupees, and you will get a job in KPMG. All these things. A lot of people pay that money. After that, what happens is they do not get jobs. People run away. Then they come after the company. So if a case is filed against a company for this placement racket, how do you defend the case? What are the evidences that are necessary? How do you ensure what are the compliances that you tell? What is the record keeping you tell your company to keep to ensure कि कल से कोई criminal proceedings हो रहे हैं? They should be able to defend themselves. Fake degree and certificate. Like I said, this is a criminal offense. If somebody is submitting fake degrees or certificate and later it is found out, then you will have to proceed under them. And yahi hai. That is where your knowledge comes, that you should be able to advise your client that yes, in this case, you should go for criminal proceeding. In this case, civil proceedings are enough. And for that, you need knowledge of both criminal proceeding and certain knowledge of civil laws, that how proceedings happen in that. Companies Act. Now, Companies Act has a lot of provisions that will have criminal consequences. For instance, 447 deals with punishment if there's a fraud that is committed by the company. Then if there's a false statement given by officials of the company, then it will have criminal consequences. Then if there's a false evidence in court of law, which knowingly or unknowingly, your intention is not even important. So these are proceedings that a lot of time, if you Google right now, you will see so many companies who get caught in these sections. So you should know that how proceedings work, which of them are compoundable, which of them are non-compoundable. Then GST. ये तो सभी को आएगा. That if somebody is supplying goods without an invoice to evade tax, और किसी ने false invoice कर दिया, उसमें गलत GST number लिख दिया, then there's a person, then any customer can go and file a police complaint against that person. If somebody collects GST but is not submitting the same to the government within 3 months, then that will have criminal consequences. And not just GST officials, but any other person can also file a criminal complaint. Fraudulently taking a refund of CGST or SGST. Again, not just under IPC, but you have separate provisions if you have fraudulently applied for refund of CGST or SGST. Income Tax Act. If somebody is willfully attempting to evade tax, then there's a specific penalty, and especially if अगर आपका taxation वगैरह 25 lakh से ज़्यादा रहता है yearly, then not only IT department will proceed against you in a civil manner, but they will not only there will be heavy penalty, but there might be criminal proceedings depending if you have done this previously, depending if it is shown that you have done a lot of things just to evade tax. So yeah, these are the different kind of matters with which you can serve corporate clients. I hope the session was useful. You learned something new. I'll be doing another session in much more detail 2 days later. So try to attend that, where I'll be discussing each of these things in detail. And second, we have already had a workshop on drafting complaints and FIR, which I have explained to you how important that is. So go and check that workshop on LawSikho's YouTube page. We are having a workshop on 30th January where we will be discussing in a lot of detail what are the things you need to keep in mind when you're drafting bail application. Trust me, this is one of the most important skills that any young lawyer who is entering legal profession should know, irrespective of whether you plan to do civil or criminal law. Because bail application बहुत easy होती है, but there are certain nuances. If you know, you will, and we have been working on this since last 10 days. This is going to be extreme value for time. So try attending this workshop. You can register it here on 𝘀𝘪𝘏.webinars. And second thing, now your questions. Yeah. Pushpreet is asking, does criminal litigation course of 𝘀𝘀 will cover both, or I have to check out the introductory course on Companies Act as well? No, Pushpreet. If you do criminal litigation course, we will be discussing how do you proceed, how do you draft complaints in cases of offenses against companies as well. So the courses in standalone deals with a lot of corporate offenses. Plus we have material and we are there to guide you on how this works in all the things I have discussed, even if each of them are not taken in detail. Thank you, Jagannath, for posting the link to the workshop. So guys, hopefully I will see you in workshop. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search Yash Vijayvargiya. My name is Yash Vijayvargiya. I'm a consultant with 𝘏𝘂. If you have any doubts or anything you want to reach out or any help even outside the workshop or course, you can contact me. I hope that this was a useful workshop and you have learned something. How was your experience? On 1 to 10, what will you say that did you learn something useful today? Please let me know your responses. If this was useful, if I see that this is useful for a lot of people, we will conduct similar workshops in future. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Connect if you ever need any help for criminal litigation or corporate, just contact me. Hoping to talk to a lot of you in future. Thank you so much.